Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. For this episode, I want to talk about the concept of responsibility. If you're listening to this, you're probably thinking that you take full responsibility for everything in your life. But the truth is that most of us don't. Most of us take full responsibility for things that we have decided about. But when it comes to taking responsibility for things that happen to us in life, we don't. We're conditioned not to, actually. We're conditioned to blame circumstances and things happening around us. We're even conditioned to blame other people. When I first started working with my coach, she gave us the task of reading an article by a beautiful man named Bob Proctor, and his article is called Responsibility. My coach asked us to read this article every day for 30 days. And I thought, well, now that's an interesting homework assignment. Why would I want to read the same thing over and over again? But it turns out in reading it over and over again, that concept of responsibility really sinks in. It's true for any new concept that we're learning that first time we're just learning the concept, I guess, is a good way to put it. But each time that we review it, we think more about it, we hear it again, our mind and our body starts to integrate with that new concept. So when I think about responsibility as a human, I would say that, myself included, but most parents that I have interacted with, I don't even know if I would say most. I would say all of the parents that I have interacted with, to some degree, take responsibility for their actions, for their circumstances, for what's happening in their life. But that other percentage, whatever that is for each individual parent, the part that they're not taking responsibility for what's happening in their life, we're blaming something else that's happening. We're blaming our child. We're blaming circumstances. We're blaming the school system, or perhaps maybe the circumstances that our child was in before they came into our home, if we're talking about a child who has been adopted or in foster care. We take responsibility to a point until it gets too hard. And then we pass that responsibility onto something else. But when we aren't taking full responsibility for what's happening in our life, and we're instead blaming circumstances or blaming other people, we're actually also giving them our freedom of choice. When we don't take responsibility, we create somewhat of a prison in our own mind about how we see the world and what influence we have over what's happening. So I can say that Oftentimes, when I assign to my clients this responsibility article, that next session when we talk about it, when I ask them, so did you read the article? And if so, what came up? I often get a lot of, yeah, I read it. It was really interesting, but how can I take responsibility for things that are out of my control? I can't control if, someone passes away. I can't control if my child comes to me with a significant trauma history. I can't control if my child is being bullied at school. Absolutely. The article actually isn't about, and that this concept of responsibility isn't about you controlling circumstances. We can't. Life happens to us. But what we have full control over, and we don't realize it, is that we have full 100% control over our thoughts and feelings about all of those circumstances. And we're trained, and by trained, I mean the people in our lives that we watch on media, in our homes, on social media, the people around us are teaching us, showing us that we take responsibility to a point, but at some point, that responsibility in our lives becomes somebody else's. We become victim to what's happening. But imagine the freedom that you would feel if you took full responsibility for how you were feeling about things. So, say that you're raising a child who has significant behaviors, and you're getting calls from school every day telling you to come pick them up, or that they're in detention, or that another parent called to complain about what your child had done, or that your child is getting suspended, or they're discussing expulsion, or your child stole something again, right? All of these things can happen. They're circumstances. As parents, we often get stuck in this victim loop, this thought process about, I can't believe this happened again, or of course my child did, X, Y, and Z, or the school isn't supporting me, or whatever that negative thought process is that you are living on repeat. That thought process keeps you stuck as a victim in your own head. But those thoughts that you're having, you get to choose to keep them or to create new ones. They're just thoughts. You get to decide if you want to shift the way that you're thinking about the circumstances that you're confronted with. When we take full responsibility for the circumstances in our life, for the way that we respond to what's happening, not react out of our old ways of thinking, but when we take control and start responding to what's happening in our life in a productive, forward moving way, that full responsibility comes with a pure sense of freedom. When we take full responsibility for what we're thinking, how we're feeling, we're not giving up our feelings and our thoughts to somebody else. We're not allowing others to dictate what's going on in our own head, what's happening in our emotions. And then when we take full responsibility, we take action that is aligned with the way that we want to be thinking and feeling about the situation. I can tell you that when things were tricky at home with my son, I did not know this concept at all. In fact, I felt so victim to what was happening. I passed over the responsibility for how I was feeling about everything that was happening in my home. I passed over that responsibility to my ex-husband, to the school, to my son, to people who I thought were judging me. I gave over all of that responsibility for how I was feeling to everybody else. I didn't know that I could take that responsibility for myself. I didn't know that when I was passing off my responsibility, that it was having a huge impact not only on the outcome, right? Because when I was giving over all that responsibility for what was happening, when I was blaming others, blaming the circumstances, I not only was giving over the responsibility of all of my own feelings, which left me feeling desperate and angry and frustrated and resentful and regretful and at the end of my rope. I was feeling all of those negative feelings because I gave up my responsibility for how I was feeling about what was happening, how I was thinking about what was happening in my life. When I did those things, I set myself up for significant issues with my own self image, my own self respect, my relationships. When I gave up my responsibility for what was happening in my life, I also gave up everything that comes with it. Now, I know as you're listening to this, you're thinking, yeah, this is great, Angie, but I'm a parent. I have to take responsibility for my kids. And you're not wrong, right? When you decided to take on the responsibility of bringing a child into your home, however you did that, biologically, through a court process, through foster care, however your child ended up in your home, you decided to take on that responsibility, however they ended up in your home. And so for a certain amount of time, you are responsible for some of their actions. You are responsible for making sure you keep them safe and that you are doing your part. But even while all of that is happening, you're still responsible for your thoughts and feelings about it. When we're raising children who have challenging behaviors, we get to take full responsibility for how we think and feel about that. And I can tell you because I hear it time and time and time again that it is so easy for us to say, yeah, but it's inevitable that I feel frustrated or overwhelmed or whatever that feeling is. You can't, I will hear from parents that you can't live in a situation like I live in and and take responsibility for your emotions. They don't quite say it like that, but what they say is you can't live in a situation like I do and feel good about it. But the truth is that you can. The truth is that you have the right to say whatever it is that you want to say, think whatever it is you want to think, feel whatever it is you want to feel, and you also have full power to get yourself out of that. So I think about all of the circumstances that I've experienced. And yeah, initially, if I look back and I could do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. Because if I knew if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't be here showing up for you. But, but follow me for a second. If I could go back and know then what I know now and do it differently, I would have gotten that call from that school and felt frustrated for a second, for a minute, for 5 minutes, however long I needed. And then I would have taken back control of my thoughts, taken back control of my emotions, and said, wow, okay, that happened. How do I want to think about this situation? How do I want to feel about this situation? Because what was really happening is I would get that call from the school or from my child's other parent or whatever it might have been. I would get that call and my thoughts would spiral. I would be thinking about the last time that it happened or the consequences of what's going to be coming up next or worrying about the future. My thoughts would be all over the place about the past, about the future, not about the present, not about what my child needed from me right now, not about what my child was trying to tell me or tell school or try to communicate out into the world at all. That's not what was going on in my head because I was allowing myself to be victim to the thoughts running through my head about fear of the past, fear of the future, and not really being in the present. That's my hope for you as you're listening here is that as you're thinking about what's happening in your life, that you take this little nugget of shift in the way that you're showing up and feel whatever you need to feel for a minute or for 5 minutes or for 30 seconds, whatever it is, and then make a decision that you want to create a new thought about it. I know that creating a new thought about a crummy circumstance is exceptionally hard. And oftentimes it requires working with a coach to help you figure out how to change that thought process. But it's not impossible. I know that full-heartedly because I am living and breathing and experiencing it every single day now. Things happen in my life every day, every week, every month that throw me off, that bring up negative thoughts, negative feelings. And it happens just reactively, right? My mind goes to fear of the past or worrying about the impact it will have on the future, which immediately creates a feeling to go along with that negative thought because I'm human. We all are. When I have that negative feeling, I have worked so hard to now say, like, oh, here we go again. What is that thought that I need to create to shift my feelings so that I can take the action that I want to take? I don't want to continue to take the action that is inevitable because I'm stuck in a negative thought loop, stuck in a negative frequency of feelings. I choose that I don't want to do that anymore. And this is what I'm here to help parents do too. I know that it takes courage to think differently than you've been doing before, because quite honestly, it's safe there, right? It's safe to blame. It feels safe, at least, to blame circumstances, to blame what is happening in your life or your kid's life. It's your comfort zone because that's where you've been for a while now, probably your entire life. But I implore you to take this podcast episode and really think about the next time you have a circumstance that creates that negative feeling in you. I implore you to feel that feeling and then stop yourself and say, okay, what do I need to think about this situation so that I can shift my feeling to the positive end of the spectrum? If you're not sure how to do that, reach out to me. My contact info is always in the show notes. So when you're ready, I am here for you. I wish you the very best with your family as you work through these really challenging things. And again, I'm here for you when you are ready. Take care, and we will talk soon. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.